Chapter 3, The Witch and the Goblin. I was surprised that we were able to sleep in purgatory. I was worried that since we were dead, we wouldn't be able to enjoy the simple things like sleep and food. My stomach growled at the idea of food. I rolled out of bed and stretched. I looked down at the rug which Fenrir would usually be asleep on. He was gone. I could smell breakfast coming from the kitchen. My stomach sank and excitement welled up inside me. "Mum!" I yelled. I ran out of my room to see her. I came running into the kitchen. I was relieved that my mom was not dead, but I was sad it was not her. Instead, a small green man stood wobbling on a chair. He wore a small pair of glasses which sat upon a sharp, pointed nose. He was barely 3 feet tall. He had a tiny black top hat on his head with very thin white hair poking out from under it. He wore a tiny tuxedo with a black goatee. He was stirring eggs in a pan alongside sausage. "Who are you and where is Fenrir?" I growled as I slid to a halt in the dining room. "He's fine, I just let him outside to use the restroom. We mean no harm. Now come, join us," a lovely voice with a thick Scottish accent replied. I heard a deliberate cough. It pulled my attention towards a beautiful woman. She sat cockily in a chair at the dining room table. Something about her captivated me. She was stunning. She had dark tan skin. Strange symbols ran up and down her arms and across her chest. She sat with her legs crossed, and one swayed with impatience. She wore a sleeveless black-laced dress with frills. It was extravagant. She had a large pointy hat with a large brim on her head. Gorgeous fiery red hair cascaded down and curled gently over her shoulders. Her left eye was green like an emerald, and it looked deceptively innocent. A large scar sealed her right eye shut. It ran from slightly above her right eye and ended halfway down her cheek. She was stunning. "Ahem, you are in the presence of the great with Agatha. Stop being rude and introduce yourself." The green man slammed his utensil onto the wood stove. The sound startled me. It snapped me out of my morning daze. "I am sorry. My name is Tyrell Larson. Thank you for letting Fenrir outside. Why are you two in our home?" I bowed out of instinct to the pretty lady. I cautiously made my way around the kitchen towards the dining room table. I pulled up a chair and momentarily turned my back towards the woman and the green man. I took the opportunity to grab a small sharp knife from the kitchen counter. I nestled into the seat and looked at the woman and waited for her response. "It is a coincidence that we are here. We were passing through this valley when we witnessed the sky opened and a large ball of fire fall out of it. We felt the earth shake as it landed near here and knew we had to check it out," the woman said calmly. My mind flashed to the image of the scythe that was sitting in the bottom of the crater. "Who are you two and what do you want?" I asked. The green man cleared his throat and jumped down from the chair while holding the pan with eggs and sausage. "Forgive our intrusion. My name is Impson, and that is Agatha. I hope that breakfast will make up for us entering without permission," he said while he scooped some eggs onto a couple of plates. "Forgive me, but you smell strongly," Impson said weirdly. His long pointy nose was too close to my face as he sniffed me. "Strongly?" I was about to ask when a loud roar rang out through the village. It was different from the ones Behemoth had been making before. "Welp, I thought we had more time for pleasantries. You are up, boy." Agatha got up out of her seat in a flash and flicked her wrist. A large black folding fan appeared in her hand. "There is a demon coming to devour your friend," she said. Her smile turned sour, and she hid it behind the fan. A tight pain gripped my chest. I keep putting Fenrir in danger, I thought. I had gotten lost in my self-hatred when another roar rang out. I had no time for thinking. "Where is Fenrir? If you did anything to him, I will kill you," I said, seething with anger. I felt hot, boiling in rage. Like I said, young man, I let him outside. She fanned her face to hide her words. I turned and ran towards the far end of our hut. We called it our war corner. I ran over and grabbed my bow and my quiver. I looked all over the room for a sword or a large knife. With no luck. I turned and ran out of the house. I was about to head towards the village when another footstep rocked the ground, and another loud roar rang out. I looked up in amazement. A giant stood at the far end of the valley. It looked like it had jumped down from the mountain. I could not make out any details, but from the distance it must have had a height of 30 feet. "Fenrir, howl if you hear me!" I screamed at the top of my lungs with everything I had. The largest blood-curdling roar yet rang out. The sound made spruce and pine trees sway in the distance. It came from the giant demon's direction, and the ground began to shake more rapidly. The beast was racing towards us. It was quickly coming into view. It was terrifying. The demon stood 30 feet tall and had the body of a naked man. Large black tattoos like those Agatha had been all over its body. "Fenrir, howl again, buddy," I yelled. I was running out of time to look for Fenrir. This demon was bloodthirsty for something. "You smell strongly," I thought. Is that what Impson meant? Realization grew in my mind. It wants us, my soul, Fenrir's soul. Fear gripped me until I heard Fenrir howl out. It sounded like he was coming from the same direction as the demon. "Oh God, Fenrir, what have you done this time?" I sighed and knocked an arrow onto my bow. I felt courage well up and give me the strength I needed to continue. I dug my feet into the ground and launched myself in the direction of the demon. I was jumping more than running. My strides were so powerful. I was cruising through the streets of our village. I felt so light and nimble. I made my way past the church and noticed that the crater was gone. I heard another howl, and it confirmed Fenrir was safe. I decided to head into the graveyard and see what happened. I hoped that if we laid low the demon would keep moving. I was afraid to confront it. I walked into the graveyard. To my amazement I saw Behemoth the Scythe leaning against a magnificent new stone. I felt this weird pull towards the stone, and I made my way towards it. I felt my throat swelling up and my eyes were softening their ducts. I knew exactly what this was. I walked around the face and looked at the writing carved onto the stone. I burst into tears at the words that read our names, dates, and a message from my parents. The stone's plaque read, Tyrell Larson 1109A 1125. Fenrir Larson 1120A 1125. Forgive and protect. How is this here, Behemoth? I asked. Tears were streaming down my face, and it was all I could do just to hold my head up towards the sky. Today is Sunday. Every 7 days purgatory gets realigned with the living world. Therefore the crater I made is gone and this new gravestone is here. Blue smoke flowed softly out of the shimmer of the blade from the scythe. The blue ox's face appeared in the reflection of the sterling silver blade. What does it say? I asked. I was embarrassed to admit it, but I could not read. It shows the dates for which the two of you perished. It also states the following. Forgive and protect. Behemoth read the words kindly. A loud cry roared out and it sent shivers down my spine. The demon was near our village. I panicked and dropped my bow and the knife onto the ground. I braced myself and grabbed the scythe. I dug my feet deep into the ground and wrapped my hands around the handle of the silver scythe. I turned to run while wielding it like some sort of berserker. It did not budge. I turned back and gripped it and lifted it with everything my legs and back could give. Behemoth burst into a roar of laughter. You will never be able to wield me, let alone lift me. The face of the blue ox looked amused. I will have you know I was able to lift an entire spruce tree out of the ground. I think I am strong enough to move a scythe, I said through grit teeth. Behemoth roared into more laughter and replied, it takes more than strength to move a forest. His words got under my skin, and I pulled harder. I got the scythe to lift ever so slightly from the ground. For a split second I thought I had it, but it fell to the ground with a loud crash. How dare you drop me, mortal? Behemoth roared. A loud roar from the direction of the demon replied. I heard Fenrir let out a cry in the distance. Moments later he crashed into the graveyard. He landed with a thud and skid across the grass and dirt flung into the air. The demon had kicked him. Panic and fear were now motivating my attempts to lift Behemoth and the scythe he was imprisoned in. "I won't let you hurt Fenrir," I yelled. A deep heat began to emanate from the weapon. A thick blue smoke enveloped my arm and filled me with extra strength. I lifted the scythe with ease. Behemoth roared and let out a boisterous laugh. I barely caught a glimpse of his smile as I dug my heels into the dirt, and I jumped into the air. "To move a forest, you need a reason to," Behemoth roared as I tried to force the silver blade through the demon's neck. It connected, but it did not slice. I felt a sharp pain from the entire left side of my body. The demon stumbled slightly and then retaliated with a slap. The demon's hand alone was larger than my body. The blow sent me soaring through the graveyard. I flew until I crashed through a large stone wall. It exploded into chunks of rock and dust scattered the area. It momentarily blocked out my sight. My anger boiled. I was furious at how helpless I felt. Again, I never could accomplish anything while I was alive. Why would it be any different in death? I thought. A deep sadness I had been running from my entire life overwhelmed me. A loud familiar howl broke through the dust and my thoughts pulled me back to the moment. Judging by the position, distance, and tone, I gathered that Fenrir was in position, and he was ready to attack the demon. I took a deep breath and ran easily to the stunning handle of the scythe. I felt the deep curve as it bent into the crescent moon shape. My fingertips rested perfectly against the golden vines that ran along the handle. They functioned as there. I felt the cool touch of the golden vines along Behemoth's handle. My grip tightened and I took a deep breath. I pulled Behemoth closer and steadied my stance. I remembered the words my father would yell drunkenly at me during our training sessions. "If you can't take a hit, you don't deserve to sit," he would say. It would often refer to him making me stand during dinner, until I stopped crying. The memory made me chuckle. "You don't hit as hard as my old man," I said mockingly. I spat blood onto the ground and wiped debris from my tunic. I heard a snicker, and I looked up behind me. On the roof of the church sat the witch from earlier. She sat with one leg casually draped over the other. She waved her fan in front of her face as she sarcastically cheered. "You got this, sick boys." Her words were tantalizing, but they sounded like poison in my ears. Her taunts deepened my irritation. More blue smoke came from the amethyst grapes before I could call out to her. Another smack from the demon sent me spiraling into the side of the church. I felt the wood splinter behind me. I was surprised that I did not crash through the woods like I had with the stone wall. I looked behind me and I saw a pink transparent bubble. The bubble had caught me and softened my impact. "Make sure to thank Miss Agatha. She wasted her precious magic on you," I heard the green man say. "Thanks Agatha. I will not waste the chance." I grit my teeth and gripped the handle. I ran as fast as I could and leapt into the air as high as I could before I yelled out to Fenrir, "Myko." I yelled while driving the blade of the scythe down into the head of the demon. Its face twisted in pain, and it let out a blood-curdling cry. I felt the metal ding as it rang from striking the demon's skull. The demon stumbled backwards and rushed his hands to his face. However, before it could regain its composure, Fenrir struck. He came running out from behind a bush and lunged at the giant. He slashed with his claws and a deep gash opened on the demon's chest. The demon roared. Fenrir ran around it and jumped onto its back. Fenrir bit down on the nape of the creature's neck. It roared and reached for Fenrir. Fenrir did not notice, and the demon grabbed him. It threw him into the side of the church and more splinters shot into the air. Fenrir yelped. "Fenrir, I'm coming," I shouted. I set Behemoth down and pulled my bow from my back. I knocked an arrow and let it fly. It struck the demon in its eye. Blood splashed as it flailed, and it tried to pull the arrow out. I heard a squishing sound as the demon pulled out the arrows along with its eye. It screamed and threw it to the ground. "Let's finish this Fenrir," I called out. I gripped Behemoth tightly and the blue smoke enveloped my arm. A small symbol of an ox appeared on the back of my right hand in blue. We ran in opposite directions around the disoriented demon and struck. I cleaved the demon through its side and Fenrir slashed at its throat. A bright flash of light exploded out of the demon through cracks that began to form in its skin. It let out one final roar before it erupted into a handful of tiny white flames. They danced majestically where the demon had just stood. I watched in awe at the sight. They swayed and moved brilliantly in the sky. "Now Tyrell, hold the scythe up to them," Behemoth called out. I rose the blade up towards the flames. Behemoth's face appeared in the reflection. He began sucking in a large breath of air and the white flames sucked into the scythe. In and out of focus in the shimmer of the blade, unfamiliar faces smiled. They looked relieved as they floated past on an invisible current. It was nothing like the faces I witnessed on Death's scythe, Leviathan. I felt energy well up inside of me for a moment and a gust of wind blew. "I accept you as my wielder, Tyrell Larson." Behemoth nodded in approval in the reflection. Before I could ask more about the flames and Behemoth's words, Agatha called out from the doorway of the church. "Great job, kid. I honestly thought I was going to have to step in." She laughed as she walked into the building. Behemoth and I made an awkward exchange of glances. Fenrir barked, "You did amazing. You truly are meant to be grim." I praised Fenrir. I placed Behemoth on my back, and I made my way towards the church. "Thank you for your help also, Behemoth." I made sure to tell him how much I appreciated it. I entered the church and saw Agatha and Impson sitting on one of the benches in the large open room. I entered and set Behemoth down against the wall. Fenrir followed in next to me. He made his way towards the green man and sat down. Fenrir began licking himself and mending bruises he had gotten. Impson began to pet Fenrir. Agatha patted the seat next to her and waved me over. She wore a bright proud smile on her face. "I knew you were not in any real danger, so do not be mad." She laughed sarcastically. "Did you summon that thing here?" I asked. Agatha shook her head. "Kind of. Technically you and I both did. Demons are always hunting for human souls," she replied. Impson spoke up from next to her. He looked tiny sitting next to Fenrir. "I told you. You smelled strongly." He spoke. He straightened his glasses. "Now that we finally have a chance to talk, why were you in my house earlier?" I asked. I sighed and felt relief washing over me. I felt like for the moment, I could relax. Agatha got up and took a couple of steps forward. She turned and put her hands behind her back and leaned forward. Her cleavage bulged out the top of her laced dress. She looked at me with a large grin on her face. Even with her only have one eye, I knew she had winked at me. She slowly moved her without trouble to the bottom of her dress and slowly pulled her hands up. She revealed more and more skin as she raised the skirt above her thigh. I blushed and tried to look away, but my pubescent mind had my eyes locked on her fingers. A black leather book interrupted my daydream as it came into view. It had a silver pentagram embedded in the cover. Agatha unstrapped it from a leather strap she had around her thigh. She flipped it open to a book and spoke words I did not understand. A small glowing orb appeared in the air in front of me and I saw the picture of what appeared to be a man. However, he was not a man. He had the head of an owl. "This is the demon," she said. Her voice was more serious now. I looked closer at the picture in the orb. The man wore a black suit, the collar was ruffled, and a white shirt could be seen underneath it. He stood with his hands in his pockets. His head was that of a grey and white owl. A large beak sat where his mouth should be. He had two amber eyes. Two large grey and white speckled wings stretched from his back. Every feather had an eyeball sewed into it. They all looked tormented. "We need you to help us kill him and retrieve my eye." She rubbed the scar on her face as she spoke. She flipped to another page in her book and summoned an extravagant chair. "To be more exact, Miss Agatha requires her full magical ability," Impson replied. He was swinging his feet playfully as he rubbed Fenrir's fur. "What do you mean?" I asked. I couldn't pull my eyes away from the demon in the orb. The sight of him filled me with unease. Agatha waved her hand and took her seat. "Let me tell you the story of how I came to purgatory. How Lucifer stole my sister away, and how I met Impson." She snickered. I noticed Impson's pointy ears droop slightly at the mention of their meeting. I nestled in and waited to hear Agatha's story.